So I come out of this 484 days after thinking positive and recognizing good things that I have. And I think it was a coping mechanism that helped me a lot in captivity.
Right.
Just being grateful and realizing the good and seeing the good,
Right.
and amplifying
Sure.
the good. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
Right.
And trying to maximizing the good, minimizing the bad.
What does it mean to you that you were held captive, that you were held hostage? What does that term mean, hostage, to you?
It means being denied of basic or fundamental human rights. I was held against my will, and I was held in horrific conditions, and I was threatened, living in constant threat and danger and uncertainty, and being totally disconnected from my family, not knowing how they were doing, knowing that they have no idea how I was, knowing that they have no idea how I am doing, and just really worrying about them, knowing how worried they are about me. And that was very, very difficult, and not knowing when or even if I would ever see them again.
You were held captive, or you were held hostage 484 days in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to summarize that time? Or is there a particular day among those 484 that embodies that denial of human rights, as you just said?
I think about my four friends that are still in captivity, and I met them in captivity, and I spent time together with them in this unbelievable, challenging, uncertain, sharing the uncertainty, sharing the danger, sharing the what I described before when I tried to describe what it means to be a hostage. Formed a very, very special bond with them, and they are still in captivity, and I'm thinking about them all the time, and I'm worried about them. This is what is occupying most of my when I think about the situation that we were in and what I experienced. I think about Matan Angrist, and I think about Omri Miran, and I think about Gali and Ziv Berman, twins from my community. And I never thought that I would be released and they would stay there. And all of the 48 hostages that are still there, I was shocked when I came back to realize, when I was released, and I realized that an agreement was reached, but not all of the hostages were going to be released.
You've spoken about your experience in the tunnels. You've spoken about how you were denied access to food and water. You've spoken about before the torture that you endured and that you had to watch others. What is the most important or most significant experience that you had that you want people to know? You want Americans to know about what you went through?
I would think about I am trying to I think that when I can tell you about many the suffering of others that I witnessed, as you mentioned, I saw a woman being tortured and being beaten, and her hands were tied together and her feet were tied together and her mouth was covered with tape, and she was on her back on the floor. And the terrorists brought me into this room and told me to tell her to confess that she had a high position in the IDF. I knew it wasn't true, and there were 3 terrorists in this room, and 2 of them were beating her with a rod, and the 3rd one was standing behind her. And as I said, she was lying on her back on the floor. He was standing behind her head, and he was holding a sharp metal rod that he had put on her forehead, and he was applying pressure to this rod, basically poking this woman's forehead. And I did what they told me to do. And I said, you must confess, otherwise they will continue this torture. And one of them put a pistol up to her head and said he was going to kill her if she doesn't confess. And I think I was not able to do anything other than what they told me to do, which was to tell her to confess. And again, I knew she had nothing to confess to. But I think I was in a position where I had no control. They had total control over me. So maybe if you ask what was the most difficult thing, being controlled all the time.
Why?
Not having control over anything.
Why is that a story that matters for people to hear? Why do you want to share that?
Because being a hostage, you have no control over anything other than what goes on in your mind. And what goes on in your mind, what went on in my mind was thoughts of maybe never seeing my family again. Maybe, even though I had promised myself that I must survive, and not only survive physically but also maintain my mental capacity. I must return to my family to bring an end to their suffering. Obviously it didn't depend only on me, but I think that yes, the fact that I was totally controlled by them, they decided whether I would get food or I wouldn't get food, I would get water, I wouldn't get water. They were going to kick me and spit on me and curse me and scream at me for no reason whatsoever or not. When they might become violent, when they were going to point weapons at me and threaten to kill me. And all these things that I'm telling you I experienced, and I know others that experienced that and many, many horrific things. So not knowing how my family is doing, how they're coping with this.
You're visiting the Twin Cities, you're visiting Minnesota as part of an exhibition about your home village, Kfar Aza. We're now nearly 2 years since October 7th. Why should Kfar Aza, why should this anniversary matter to people here, thousands of miles away from Israel?
It's very important that people know what happened on October the 7th. This is an opportunity for people to know what happened. The documentation of the exhibition and 4 members of Kfar Aza, I am one of them, that are here to tell our story, what we experienced. And I think that there's a lot of stuff out in the media, and I know that not all of it is true, because I witnessed, personally I saw firsthand what I experienced, and I have told this in the media, and not everything that I say in interviews is published or and I think here well,
how about this? Let me ask this. Sorry to catch up, but you're here in Minnesota. You're here in the Twin Cities as part of this exhibition about your hometown, Kfar Aza.
mm-hmm.
When people see and hear and learn from you and your neighbors, what do you want them to take away from your story? What do you want them to learn from you?
I want them to know the horrific atrocities that Hamas did on October the 7th by murdering, killing innocent people. And as I walk around this exhibition, these are people, a lot of them, like Michal and Eliko and Eliyahu and Nira, that I've known for 40 years. And I know what happened to them. And these are people, and there is a little explanation about these people next to their pictures. And I want people to know that this cruelty and this barbaric behavior and what Hamas did is something that the world must, I think all of us, have a responsibility to speak out against it and to act on making sure something like this will never happen again.
I know your time is up. We really appreciate everything. My last question for you is, you're one of 12 Americans that were taken hostage among the 251. You are, let me see this. All right. You were one among 12 Americans that were taken hostage by Hamas among the 251. There are no more living Americans still held hostage. Why should this hostage crisis and this war and getting the hostages home be a priority for Americans?
It should be a priority for all moral, decent, humane people in the world, because we're talking about innocent people that were kidnapped, and some have been murdered, some have been killed. It's a moral issue. It's a humane issue of saving people's lives and bringing deceased back to their families so they can bury them and mourn in a way, and they will have a grave to mourn at. And I think that good, we must make sure that good overcomes evil. And
do you still?
It happened, I mean, this massacre happened in Israel. It could happen in the US as well. Terror, on October the 7th, Muslims were kidnapped and murdered, and Buddhists were kidnapped and murdered. It wasn't only Jews. I mean, they attacked Israel, they targeted Israel, but they took hostage other people of different nationalities and different religions. It happened in Israel, it can happen here. So to make sure that it doesn't happen anywhere, we all have a responsibility to voice our voice out the that this cannot, we all must be sure that something like this cannot happen again. And part of that is to learn what happened and to know what happened in order to know, to have the knowledge and to have the tools to be able to spread the word about what happened in Kfar Aza and many other communities in Israel and the 48 hostages that are still there. We must all act in order to together bring them home and prevent anything like this from happening again, and to rebuild our community of Kfar Aza so that nobody will think Hamas or anybody else thinks that they can force us out of our homes, out of our communities. We must not let them rule us. And they ruled me for 484 days. Now, thank God, I'm a free man. But again, there are still 48 in captivity, and Hamas must learn, and it's a lesson for the world. If anybody thinks that they can force us out of our house, if they can deny us of our basic human rights, if they can murder us, if they can commit crimes of sexual violence that happened on October the 7th, and this has been documented, and babies that were murdered and kidnapped, and innocent. My neighbor Nomi, around 80 years old,
There's so many
widow.
names. Do you plan to go back? Good Louis. Do you plan to move back when it's ready? Yes.
I do.
Yeah. And where do you still find hope?
I am here. I am alive.
Yeah.
I'm standing on my 2 feet. I am advocating for the release of the hostages. And it's proof. It's proof that it can be done, and it was done. And President Trump was a driving force behind the agreement that brought me home. I'm eternally thankful to him for doing that, and I call upon him to continue his efforts to get all of the hostages back.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is in Washington today, meeting with President Trump about ending this war. The priority for you, I imagine, is get those hostages home no matter what, while also ensuring that you can move back home and feel safe.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I support an agreement that will bring all of the hostages home, end the war, and make sure Hamas will never pose a threat to the security of Israel. And I believe that means taking Hamas out of power in Gaza. I mentioned President Trump, but I also call upon Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government to negotiate a deal, an agreement that will bring all of the hostages back, end the war, prevent further death. And many soldiers have died. We have lost many, many people. So it's the responsibility of the Israeli government to provide security. And there are 48 Israeli citizens, there are 48 people that Israeli government is responsible for securing their safe return home.
Keith, thank you.
Thank you.